what allow me to continue to get the coffee run once or twice a week and still reach our millionaire status. My name is Short Sardakis. I am an associate here at Vincent Hirsch Financial Services. Today we're going to talk about whether that cup of coffee that we get in the morning before work is actually keeping us from becoming a millionaire. And that's probably something that you've heard before, right? If we've invested the cost of a cup of coffee every day, we'd be a millionaire. So mathematically speaking, that math works, right? If we put $5 for a cup of coffee over 5 days a week is $25. 4 weeks a month is $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. And if you compound that over the course of 10, 20, 30, 40 years, over time, that would result in having $1 million portfolio from $25 a week. The reason a lot of people aren't necessarily fans of this message is because even though the math isn't necessarily wrong, the lessons that we take away are just incomplete. The coffee example is trying to illustrate two very important financial principles. The first is the idea of compound interest. The idea that small amounts of money invested consistently over time can grow extremely dramatically, right? Because we're building upon interest that was built upon from former interest and so on and so forth. The second is the idea of opportunity cost. What am I giving up now to gain later? I'm giving up $5 now to maybe have $8 later. So it's the idea that every dollar you spend today cannot be invested into the future. And these are both extremely important ideas. But when the message gets simplified down into skipping the coffee so you can be rich, it accidentally suggests that wealth is primarily about cutting these small expenses. And if that was the case, then everybody would be doing it. And that, for a lot of behavioral economists and behavioral financiers, is where the argument begins to fall apart. From a behavioral perspective, long-term financial success isn't usually grown or driven by extreme micro-sacrifice. It's driven by systems. The advice that people hear typically is you need to eliminate every small cost, every small indulgence. Don't go to Wawa, spend the $3, make your sandwich at home. Now that also tends to create friction and resentment over the long term. That kind of gets into a conversation about cognitive fatigue from the cognitive psychology literature, where the more decisions that we make actively, the more exhausted that we tend to become. And sometimes these little coffee runs or that trip to Wawa could help to be that little reset that we need, so this way we can replenish our cognitive systems and move forward. With that being said, these behavioral modifications that create long-term resentment don't usually last. They're not really that sticky. Whereas the truth is that sustainable financial habits tend to look more like structures and consistency rather than self-deprivation and restriction. That's things like automated savings, automated bill pay, making sure that we're signed up to 401k, auto enrollment and auto withdrawals, intentional and consistent savings, intentional cash flow, making sure that we're aware of everywhere that our money goes. This incremental progress over time does help long-term behaviors become more sticky, more consistent, and help to create less stress deprivation. When we take a step back and we look at the coffee argument in the broader context of things, we realize that there are bigger levers to pull than just the coffee argument. For most people, those being particularly young and mid-career professionals, coffee isn't necessarily a thing that's standing between them and financial independence. It's things like income growth, career development, making sure that we're saving enough, being consistent with our investments, making sure that our investments align with our long-term goals or just short-term goals, and risk management, whether that's insurance or making sure that our investments are properly allocated. More so, we also have things like promotions, career pivots. Are we stuck in a job that we think we're going to hit our ceiling soon? Do we want to make a pivot so we can make more money? Increasing our savings rates by a little bit, so this way we can go on that vacation or buy that house or make sure that we have the wedding of our dreams. These points typically have a much larger impact than just cutting small and discretionary expenses. Yes, we have to maybe cut small discretionary expenses in order to achieve these goals, but there's a fine line between making it feel like we're sacrificing versus depriving ourselves from these things. There is a point where you can have your cake and eat it too. So does that mean that these expenses don't matter, these small expenses don't matter? No, it just means that they're not the primary driver. It means that even though these small expenses do add up over time, treating yourself every now and then, going to get coffee, it's not going to make or break the bank if we're accomplishing these other goals. So can we build wealth while going to get that cup of coffee? This is kind of where that real lesson comes into play. Rather than focusing on eliminating our coffee run, the better question becomes, what financial behaviors allow me to continue to get the coffee run once or twice a week and still reach our millionaire status? There's a few things here that tend to matter more. The first is automated investing, making sure that every paycheck we're contributing to a 401k or 403b or employer savings, making sure that we have maybe X dollars a month going into this after-tax investment account or Roth IRA, having X dollars a month going into an emergency savings account, making sure that we have these automated systems in place so this way it takes the thought out of it. And now we're left with a number in the bank account, know that we can just spend at the end of the month. The second thing we would look to accomplish is making sure that we increase our savings contributions as our income increases over time. Yes, lifestyle creep is real. So maybe we get a pet and that was an expense that we had last year, or maybe we start buying different types of foods, or we go shopping at different stores because we weren't able to do that last year, or we signed up for a different gym, so now that's something that we didn't get to do last year. We still want to be able to do these things, but we also want to make sure that even if a small part of our raise goes to savings or goes to increased savings. So if I get a 15% pay raise year over year and I increase my savings rate by 3 or 4 percentage points, that's drastically going to help increase and accelerate our wealth building capacity. The third thing we look to do is focus on consistency rather than perfection. This is a big deal because trying to perfectly time the markets is very rare and seldom happens. The idea is that we look to consistently invest money into these accounts over time to help take advantage of market swings, market lows, market highs. This is something that's called dollar cost averaging. And it is a great tool to help promote this wealth building strategy and habit, and allows us to compound money at different points in the market or from different points in the market. And finally, making sure that we align our spending with our core values. If coffee is something that genuinely improves our day or our week, or it's something maybe we don't drink and coffee is our vice, then we want to make sure that we're still able to do that. We don't want to eliminate it from our financial lives altogether. We still want to be able to go and have fun and be social, but maybe we don't need to go out 5 or 6 times a week. Making sure that we're making these mindful decisions, you can have your cake and eat it too. Mindless spending about things that we don't necessarily care about can help to drain our ability to invest, whether that's things like discretionary shopping for something that we don't necessarily need, or buying 5 of an item when we really only need 2 or 3. These expenses are the ones that tend to add up more so than a $5 cup of coffee once a week. And so what is the real lesson here behind the coffee argument? The idea here is twofold, as we had already mentioned. It's the idea that compound interest works, and it's the secret and number one weapon to building wealth. And the second is that we have to understand the idea of opportunity cost. What am I giving up now for the future? I'm going to give up $3 now and hopefully have $7 or $8 later in the future. It's the idea that these small behaviors repeated consistently over time can mean wonders later down the road. And these behaviors exist within a much broader structure. Again, those being income, career, financial planning, long-term goals, etc. That's how we look to achieve both, right? We look to achieve a balance. making sure that we're having our coffee, making sure that we can achieve this millionaire status by the time we're 55, 60 years old. We don't need to eliminate every small indulgence. We need to make sure that we are designing systems within our financial life to allow for progress to happen automatically and take advantage of the idea of compound interest. And with the right structure in place, we can go and have our cup of coffee. We don't have to sacrifice one for the other all the time. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to the next video with you guys. Thanks so much.